For people who might think that I'm not leaving my room, okay, well, first off, I can't now because there's hockey on. This just proves I am watching hockey. And I tried taking a video in Disney Park today, and it's just the music's loud, and there's music everywhere, and it's all copyright protected music. And I was like, this just doesn't work. So I tried. I legit tried. Now I did get a short video that I posted on the Entertainment Guy of my stepkids on one of the rides. So that happened. And of course, Yvonne and I have been getting a bunch of pictures taken around the park, and they'll be getting posted all over the place. As Subban, what is the deal here? What did Subban do to Kachuk? They don't look like they like each other very much right now. Oh, that's just not nice. I don't know what Subban did. Must have been going after the goaltender. Okay, I hate the auto-rotate thing. Why did it auto-rotate that way? All right. So there's something I wanted to talk about, which is why I'm doing the video now while I'm still watching hockey, and we've got other games going on too. Secondary assists. Now, I've talked about this before. I'm going to try to explain this again. So when we talk about league leaders and assists, people will always come out and say, but you have to have secondary assists and primary assists, because secondary assists are crap and primary assists are gold. That is the insinuation. Here's the thing. I take a shot from the point. It deflects twice. The guy with that deflection before the goal, he has the primary assist, and the guy who had the second deflection has the goal. So that means his deflection was more important than my shot from the point, which led to both touches of the puck. And then there's instances too where a guy will be standing next to an empty net, and I don't know, Connor McDavid might throw it to him, and all he has to do is just dish it right into the net. It's a goal, but it was probably a little bit easier than some of the other goals we've seen. And this is where sometimes I think we just go completely amok with stats, and we overanalyze the game into the ground. And this is something I try really hard not to do, which is why some people go, Shannon just does the surface stuff. Right, because hockey's kind of a surface sport. And I hate to say that. Baseball's a very intricate game of one versus one. And so you can analyze one pitcher versus 9 hitters in a game, and then by the end of the game it might be 12 different hitters and 6 different pitchers for all those different hitters, maybe 15 different hitters depending on if it's National or American League. There's all kinds of different matchups. Hockey, there's 18 guys on one team, 18 on the other, and then there's a lot of stuff that happens, yes. But I do think there's over-analysis that takes place, and I think the secondary assists argument is part of it. Because if we're going to say, well, not all assists are created equal, some of them are secondary and some of them are primary, I'll counter and say, okay, well then not all goals are created equally either, because there's garbage goals and then there's really nice goals. There's goals scored on these wonderful breakaways where a guy might have 3 or 4 dekes before he puts it in the net. Should that have the exact same equality as a guy who just dumps it into the net when he's got the open side? Yes. My answer is yes. And I think all assists are equal as well. I honestly, I've thought for a long time that it is an argument that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And I've seen it. And I've seen the charts. Oh, this guy's great at primary assists. I'm thinking, okay, this guy gets a lot of secondary assists. And when I see it's a defenseman, I go, well, yeah. Yeah, he's going to get a lot of secondary assists as a defenseman because he's further back. And when people say, well, that's not an important one, the first thing I think is, so the outlet pass isn't important either then? Because that's not a primary assist in most of those instances. So for that guy who gets that pass out of his own zone and make sure it doesn't go to the other team, maybe that's a secondary assist. That's not an important pass. And before you say, well, yeah, it's not an important pass, think of all the defensemen in the league that we have routinely slagged because they actually can't clear it out. And when they try to throw it out, they're just like, oh, you threw it to the other team. Glorious. Wunderbar. Fantastic. Thanks. Now we got to fish it out of our net. Thanks a lot. So it's an argument I see a lot, and it's like, I this is why I don't care. And I don't care whether it's a primary or secondary assist. That's why when I'm watching games and I'm writing stuff down, and sometimes the app will report the assists backwards. Sometimes the game will report the assists kind of half backwards, and sometimes it'll write them on the board half backwards. And I look and I go, well, I could switch them, but I don't really care. Both guys got an assist. It's fine. It's not a big deal. I've always been fascinated by this idea. It's sort of like how I don't report on goals against either. The funny thing is I don't report on goals against by a goaltender because that's a team stat as much as anything else. And an example I would use of that is you might have, okay, well currently, I'll use Samsonov as an example. Maybe Samsonov in Washington faces 19 shots and gets a shutout. Okay, so he had a good night. The Capitals had a good night defensively. Good on him. Detroit, you might have Jimmy Howard pulling his hair out because he faces 52 shots. Maybe he saves 48 of them. Now, he had a good night, and the save percentage will tell you Jimmy Howard had a pretty good night. But goals against average will tell you he had a miserable night. 4 is death. So that's where, to me, and again with Samsonov in that situation would be, wow, Samsonov had so much better of a night in net than Howard. But not really. So that's why I don't really care about goals against average either. I learned that as a kid, where I would always see Patrick Roy and whoever his backup was in Montreal for years, they would be your Jennings finalists or maybe favorites. And Andy Moog and Reggie Lemelin in Boston, they wanted Jennings between them as well. And I love Lemelin, but I don't think Reggie Lemelin was ever a top 3 goaltender in the NHL. And yet goals against would tell you he was a really, really excellent goaltender at times. But again, I don't think that told the whole picture. And trying to find a stat with goaltenders, save percentage is usually the best one. But again, there's guys who will go, oh, if you take a deep dive and you look at scoring opportunities and high danger chances, no, we try to keep it as simple as possible. If there's ever an assist trophy in the NHL, it'll be primary and secondary assists that go towards it. Because the other side of the argument is this. When I look at the assist totals of guys like Thornton and Oates and various guys, Henrik Sedin is another one, I don't think, well, yeah, he had over 1,000 assists, but there was probably a lot of those that were secondary. He had over 800 assists, but how many of those were primary? All I do is go, holy frick, he had 800 assists. That's a lot. I don't really care if he was the last guy to touch it before the goal scorer or the second to last guy. And the NHL hasn't changed anything regarding that. There hasn't been an indication from the NHL that they'll make one assist count for more points than the other, which would just be ridiculous. Because like I said, no, not all assists are created equal, but not all primary assists are the same, not all goals are the same, and not all secondary assists are the same. Because there are many points where you can look at a game and you can look at a score and say, you know what? This game turned on the pass that guy made, which led to the pass that ends up in a goal. So that's where, again, for me, I think, if that guy consistently gets 50 points, but of his assists, 2/3 of them are secondary, all I think is that guy consistently gets 50 points. Because then you're going to have to look at the Art Ross, too. So if you want to say, well, if we're going to have an assists award, then you have to look at primary versus secondary. Okay, then let's just get completely ridiculous. And the Art Ross, we have to start separating the assists when we decide the Art Ross trophy as well. Because there have been players who've won the Art Ross, not because they score a lot of goals, but because they get a lot of helpers. So you're going to have to look at that and look at a guy who maybe finished 5 or 6 points behind him, but had more goals, and say, well, we need to take some of those assists off for the guy who won the Art Ross because some of those are secondary assists. And this is when it gets ridiculous. All right. I'm glad we had this discussion. And stats are tricky, and this is why I very rarely talk about plus minus. I don't think plus minus is as useless as a lot of people think it is. I think plus minus is part of a picture, sort of like the advanced stats are part of a picture. And that in a vacuum, when you're looking at, say, 1 game or 2 games, and you look at a team, a good example would be, let's say Philip Hronik has a rough night for Detroit. They lose 4-1, and he's -4 on the night. And everybody else on the team is maybe a -1 or a -2. I think that plus-minus tells you Hronik had a rough night. Now, over a full season, if his plus-minus is -40, and there's others on the team that have a minus 31 or a minus 32. You can go, that doesn't really tell everything. And that's when I can understand the delving into the advanced numbers. But over a one game period, especially during the playoffs, I really pay attention to those plus minuses because they tell you which team's taking advantage of the matchups, which one's playing the matchup game a little better, and which teams are being overmatched by certain lines. And that's where it's fascinating. Hey, I find statistics fascinating. I get where people are coming from, and I wanted to provide my own side of the argument. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And yep, it is tricky. We will be in Disneyland again tomorrow. So we have 2 more days of the Disneyland part of the trip, and Wednesday we have a day off. But we will have Disneyland parts of the trip. And when we do that, I will try. You have my word, I will try. I will at the very least post pictures on all my social media of the stuff we do there just to prove I did leave the room. And and yeah, again, if there's a bunch of music playing, I have to think, okay, it's copyrighted, or that music's so loud people aren't going to be able to hear me very well anyways. So they don't want to hear wind. They're certainly not going to want to listen to It's a Small World when I'm trying to tell them about something happening. Now, if a trade takes place, I don't care where I got to go. I'll figure something out. But this week's been kind of quiet. So this has kind of been the perfect week to take away from home. But hey, thanks again for watching, for all your support. It means a ton. And I'm going to the Anaheim game on Wednesday. The game tonight is in San Jose. So we're not driving to San Jose to watch that. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.